Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Highruler, and today's video is going over the latest developer update for Suicide Squad. Now, I have read this, I have gone through this, guys, and before we even break down and go over what they're saying here, my first impressions here is that they actually are listening to a lot of our criticisms, right? Because as we go through this, one of the things that you'll notice is that this is directly responding to a lot of the criticisms with the end game. Now, if you're going into this expecting that everything's going to be changed and everything's going to be different, it's not that, right? But what they are doing is that they are making significant changes to the existing framework of their end game and making it so it's not just a little bit easier, but it's a little bit more friendly. And they're going to reference that they use the stick rather than the carrot. And this one, they're using the carrot rather than the stick, right? So the start of this is just kind of them going through and explaining the philosophy here behind the infamy sets, right? So as you go up, you get different tiers and you're supposed to go higher. But because of that, the build construction, you don't really get a lot of it until you're very high up into your end game anyways, right? So they say with episode 2, we're turning that completely on its head. All infamy set tiers and notorious items will be possible to acquire starting from mastery level 1. You can still rely on episode rank rewards to predictably and reliably give you all the loot the episode has to offer, but now you have a chance at a tier 3 infamy set item drop from mastery level 1. So, I mean, there you go, right there. If you're looking for a tier 3 and you just want to farm mastery level 1 for super quick and super easy, I mean, you theoretically can now, right? So, to me, that's a great change. I'm always in favor of player freedom and player choice, and it seems like they're now kind of embracing that philosophy a little bit, right? So let's go on and see what else they have to say. So they say, in addition to this, we're changing our philosophy when it comes to the infamy set tiers. Our original intent was that tier 1 was the easiest to play, but also the lowest power potential, and tier 3 was the hardest to play, but had the highest damage potential. Of course, the way our mastery levels are balanced, at higher mastery levels, that meant that tier 3 was pretty much the only viable infamy set. True. Our new philosophy is essentially to flatten the power difference between the tiers and create space between the tiers and how much freedom they offer. In episode 2, each tier 1 infamy set will be designed around a few specific playstyles. You'll see that 1 or 2 core mechanics are buffed, and keeping uptime on those buffs won't be a challenge. That means optimal tier 1 play will encourage you to master those specific core mechanics, and if you can handle that, you'll be able to reach damage outputs that were previously only possible with the tier 3 set. Cool, that sounds really great. On the other end of the spectrum, tier 3 gear will be the most flexible in terms of core mechanics. Our goal is that you can leverage pretty much any playstyle using a tier 3 set. However, it will be the most complex infamy set when it comes to uptime. You'll have to use all your skills to keep the buffs going, but the payoff will be that you have much more freedom in which the core mechanics to use. Tier 2 sits somewhere in the middle, and I think that's totally cool. I think that's totally fair, and I think this is a great change, right? So we're starting off pretty strong here with their changes. Introducing new grades and master items. With the flattening of the infamy set tiers, we want to make sure that there's still something to chase in the later mastery levels. That's true. That's why we're introducing an additional 4 master grades for a total of 5 that infamy and notorious items can drop with. Each grade will be much more powerful than the last, and you can expect the highest master 5 to only drop from very high mastery levels. Right there, of course, they're kind of making the chase easier with these items, but then they're introducing a new chase, right, to supplement that. So it's also a good change there, right? Then corrupted items. One piece of feedback we've heard since the launch is that players didn't have enough reasons to play the mayhem missions after beating them for the first time. We think we have just the right reward for you to fight for. Introducing corrupted notorious items. These twisted pieces of gear have been subjected to the Elseworlds corruption, changing their unique augment to provide a warped and seriously powerful version of the weapon. Being able to build around these corrupted effects is a path to some of the highest power in the game, so corrupted notorious items will be very rare drops from the episode 2 mayhem mission. But trust us, their power will be worth it. Yep, this is great. I think a lot of people at the start of the game really kind of honed in on the mayhem mission and just not being worth it. So this change is directly in response to that feedback. And once again, this is another good change, right? More loot across different missions in the game that aren't just your incursion missions are good, right? I think a lot of people want to do other stuff and be rewarded with pretty good gear, if not some of the best gear, and they want to get away from the incursions. And I think this is them, as in Rocksteady, are responding to that point of criticism and point of feedback, and this is really good. So I love that. I think this is a really good change. So they go on to say, to give an example, we'll have to give you a peek at one of our upcoming notorious items in episode 2, Firefly's Firestorm. The standard version of this red hot grenade sets all enemies hit on fire and the increased radius of your next grenade by 50% for each enemy you burn, up to a maximum of 200%. The corrupted version turns up the heat even more. It burns every enemy hit, but instead of increasing the blast radius, instead the damage of your next grenade is buffed by 200% for each enemy you burn, up to a maximum of 1000%. I mean, yeah, sure, yeah, go for it. This is just a taste of the power of being able to harness with the corrupted items if you're brave enough to face Brainiac to find them. I mean, yeah, this is a great change. I like that they kind of take an existing item that they're giving us and then giving us a different version of it. So, I mean, once again, this is a solid kind of change there, right? Breaking down items from mission complete. Yup, this is great. Not going to argue with this whatsoever. I think this was a big thing for a lot of people, so we'll take it. Now, one of the bigger ones, Mutators rework. First off, let's talk Mutators. Our intent with these was to give just enough friction in the mastery level journey that you would want to reconsider your builds and push you into changing your tactics as you progress through the mastery levels. Some mutators were supposed to be less critical things, and some mutators, like the Venom Frenzy immunity, was supposed to really push you into experimenting with new builds once you reach a certain mastery level. Essentially, we wanted to promote a more direct change in the meta to provoke new loadout configurations. It was more of a stick approach and less of a carrot, which is what I had said originally a couple weeks ago, is that everything that they've done is more of a stick, when I said what they should be doing is rewarding us for certain things that we are doing in game, right? Instead of, kind of not harming, but kind of, basically pushing us in the direction they want by, making things not fun, reward the things that they want by making them more fun. And I think that's a way better change. So good on them for recognizing that. With episode 2, we're fundamentally changing our approach to these mutators. Rather than introducing friction to encourage build diversity, we're changing these to instead be gameplay bonuses. Each mutator in episode 2 will give you a window of opportunity to take advantage of its effect. And the gameplay benefit is something we want you to be able to build around. We don't expect you to be able to build around all 6 mutators. Realistically, we want you to find the 2 to 3 you really like and that you can leverage with a build that you like. These mutators are build enhancers. That's really good. I like that. Our intent isn't that these will define your build, but rather that some of them fit the build you want to run to make it even more powerful. Perfect. This is great. Love this. This is a really good change. A couple of new mutators to illustrate this new approach are Desperation and Extra Fries. Desperation boosts your damage by 75% for every 10% of your shield missing, incentivizing a high-risk, high-reward playstyle that works great with Bizarro's Undeath Ray and Hot Potato. Extra Fries grants players 1 combo for every critical hit on a burning enemy, allowing fire builds to get off to a blazing start. Perfect. This is fine. This is great. I love that they are doing this. This is a great change by Rocksteady here. Perfect. New incursion mission mechanics. Let's move on to our incursion missions. Our original intent with these mission types was to give you all a known foundation, and that the enemy types and fusion types, your character's traversal mechanics, and your build would provide the variety in terms of how you approach the encounter. That variety was then supposed to change up as you progress through the mastery level. With the introduction of mutators, your build would change, and that would be a different approach for each incursion mission as you progress through the mastery levels. Again, we were using more of a stick approach and less of a carrot, with friction into the system to encourage changing of builds and tactics. With the launch of episode 2, Lex 2 has done an analysis of the enemies in each of the incursion encounters and will provide an aptly named Lex 2 enemy analysis bonus to help the squad out. Each new incursion mission will each have its own analysis that identifies weaknesses on the enemies, and these weaknesses make different builds really shine. During his analysis of the mission Funny Pages, Lex 2 has discovered that burning enemies will take double damage from all sources. Time for the Joker to get out there and turn up the heat. And in Seaside Amusements, it seems that the squad's critical hits will deal 150% more damage if they build accordingly. They might actually stand a chance. Yep, this is great. Right now, this is like what we need in the game, right? So once again, this is another great change here. And I like that they go back and kind of explain their philosophy behind it, because a lot of the time we can see what they're doing and we can kind of theorize why they do things that they do, but then, we don't really know. But then with a change like this, and then they're basically walking us through their original thought process, we can kind of get the idea of what they were thinking, right? So we can still disagree with it, and I still disagree with it, but it's nice to know. And their changes that they're making here are fundamentally good changes. I think you look through what we've covered so far. I mean, I'm glazing them a little bit. I, admit that, but these are really good changes, and they should hopefully help people kind of just enjoy the end game a little bit better, right? Crafting recipes from previous episodes. And another quality of life feature for episode 2 will we'll be adding crafting recipes for most of the legendary items you can find in Finite Crisis in Episode 1. Now you can straight up craft them, even if you haven't received them as a loot drop. That only applies to gear from previous episodes, so the latest and greatest loot is exactly where you'd expect it in mission rewards. Perfect. Yep, that's fine. Crafting master items. So to read this for you guys, they say one additional thing we're adding to crafting in episode 2 is that there's now a chance for items to be crafted as master versions. That means that there's a chance you'll get a master version of an item each time you craft it, which of course is true for all crafting recipes regardless of the episode they were introduced in. For the higher grade versions of the items, Masters 2 to 5, you'll still have to venture into the Elseworlds to score them, however. Yep, that's a fine change. I think, obviously, giving people the introduction of a master item on a crafting recipe is great. And then if they want the higher ones, actually go play the game. Yep, that's a perfect change. I agree with that. So let's go into the next one. Lower Promethium cost for missions. In episode 2, we'll be doing a pretty big balancing to change all Promethium costs across incursion missions, mayhem missions, and killing time missions. This is the first step in a deeper review into our different currencies and their use, but is intended to cut down the time you spend gathering Promethium before your squad can take on more serious missions. The main source of Promethium is still Raising Hell. You still get a whopping 3,000 from completing the first tier, an increasing amount for each tier. You also get a Promethium from playing the Metropolis missions, taking out Cargonauts from your care packages and from contracts. Now, here's kind of my thought process here, because before the game came out and they introduced this, I said, oh, it kind of reminds me of playing Escape from Tarkov, right? You go into labs, you have to buy the lab card, and you use it, and, you know, you get in there, and you get your loot, get out, whatever. And I like it in theory, right? But I would agree that there becomes a point in time where how much time do you have to farm for that? You know, that would be the Promethium. And then how much time do you have in the actual mission, and what are the balancing there, right? So I would probably agree that we probably spend a little bit more time for the more casual player. You know, I think if you're someone like Lejeune or you're someone that is on the top of the leaderboards, you're probably swimming in Promethium, right? But I think for someone who's just coming into the game and just trying to play through it and get through the, you know, the end game, I probably would agree they're probably spending a bit more time trying to get through Promethium rather than spending it and getting the end game, you know, getting into that part of the end game, I should say. So I think for this, I would probably just remove the Promethium, right? I understand it's supposed to be a sync, and I understand the thought process is that you're playing all the other content, right? Because if you play all the other content, as they say, then you'll be able to get, you know, Promethium to get into the end game. And I know they don't want people just to funnel into the end game, but I would probably just remove it at this point, personally. You guys are free to kind of add your thoughts there, but I think at this point, I would actually just remove the Promethium cost and just let people play the content they want. I would probably add some more loot to the other things here, you know, like maybe another, you know, different tier of weapon, or maybe a different kind of weapon, or a different percentage chance of acquiring a different weapon from some of the other stuff, so people still have a reason to grind, just like we saw with the corrupted weapons in Mayhem. There's ways to incentivize it, but, you know, I think if they were going to remove the cost, I think, yeah, you need to supplement those missions with a different kind of reward that makes people want to go and do them, right? So it's all a balancing act there, but, you know, I'm sure, you know, I've renewed faith now that they'll figure it out. Additional invasion levels. With episode 2, we'll be adding an additional 3 invasion difficulty levels for Metropolis, each with unique rewards and XP and resource bonuses. To address the feedback from you all that Metropolis content is too easy when you're fully kitted out with a proper build. All right, so the one thing, obviously, is we don't have a date here. They say all these changes will be made in the patch shortly before the launch of episode 2. But when is the launch of episode 2? And we don't really know yet. But if anything, I kind of see why last week was so quiet, right? I had said that we're probably a little too early for them to start talking about episode 2. And then the week after, they kind of break down everything that's coming in episode 2, right? So I would like to hope that moving forward till we get to episode 2, they'll kind of start talking about what we should expect, right? Now, episode 2 isn't going to be very content heavy, right? Like, I don't expect a lot of content. I mean, we expected more content with episode 1, but the truth is, for episode 2, they kind of had to do some sweeping changes in order to make sure that people were coming back, right? Because if they didn't make any of these changes and they kept it as is, and they launch episode 2, how many of us would actually go back, right? You know, probably a few to, you know, get a couple pieces of the new gear and try it out, but not too many, right? Now, with these changes, not to say everybody's going to come back, but I think now there's probably a couple more people that'll look at this and be like, well, this is kind of interesting. Let me go see some of these new changes, right? And I think that's kind of what they had to do here. So kudos on Rocksteady for making these changes, and not just making these changes, but making good changes, right? Because they could have totally fucked up a lot of this stuff here and made some of the most bizarre decisions out there. But I think what I've read so far today, and hopefully what we kind of can see moving forward, is that these changes are kind of in the interest of the player, right? As they said, they used to do a lot of stick rather than carrot, and now it seems like they're going to do a lot more carrot. So here's hoping that over the next couple of weeks, if not couple of months, till the next year, we kind of see them kind of, reiterate on some of their things, kind of make some better changes, and hopefully, for however long we do have this game left for, we do get to enjoy it to the best of our ability, right? And these changes do allow that. So that's really all I got to say today, guys. Obviously, this isn't changing anything to do with the end game structure. It still really is what we have now, but hopefully these changes make it a little more palpable for a lot of us out there. So let me know what you guys think down below. If you guys are interested in more Suicide Squad content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a nice little comment. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time here. Enjoy the rest of your day and the night. Take care of yourselves. Later, guys.